listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher.
It's nearing the end of the school year. Are you ready yet? I always am. April and May tend to wear me down. I'm tapping out. It's time for everyone to sleep in. It's inevitable, though. The beginning and ending of the school year are these markers of time in my life. Another year down, a new year begun, progression, completion, advancement, moving on. And somewhere in the back of my mind, there's a clock ticking. And that clock seems to be speeding up at an unfair pace, and it definitely never stops. Today, we're talking to Mindy McKnight, mother of 6, YouTube celebrity and the founder of Cute Girl Hairstyles, and mom to Brooklyn and Bailey, also YouTube sensations. And most importantly, they're the 2 kids that have flown the nest this year. Last year at this time, Mindy was working through what she called senioritis, watching her 2 oldest girls wrap up high school and then move through their freshman year of college. Ugh, my mama heart can barely take it. We'll talk about that transition, what scares us most about our kids and parenting in general, and what it's like to run their media empire in the middle of it all. We'll also talk about her new book, Viral Parenting, a guide to setting boundaries, building trust, and raising kids in an online world. I love her hopeful, constructive approach to kids and technology. Enjoy. Today, we're talking to YouTube celebrity, author, and multi-business owner, Mindy McKnight. She's currently ranked as one of the top 25 women on YouTube with their Cute Girls Hairstyles channel. They have over 23 million followers across all their social platforms and literally billions with a B video views. She recently published her first book, Viral Parenting, a guide to setting boundaries, building trust, and raising kids in an online world, which debuted at number 1 on Amazon for parenting school-age children and in privacy and online safety. Most importantly, she's my friend, and she makes my kids think I'm cooler than I am because I know her. So welcome to the podcast, Mindy McKnight.
Hey, thank you.
Now, first of all, I'm telling the truth. I really feel cool that I know someone who makes my kids think I'm cooler. Like, you're an actual celebrity, and when we're in public, people want to get their pictures with you. It makes my middle daughter find the occasional value in the fact that I'm her mom, that she's been able to hang out around you a couple of times.
She's so funny. She's so cute. It's so fun. I love it every time.
Well, Kate, tell me, though, the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you as a YouTube celeb.
Ooh, I don't know.
Have you had any creepy social interactions?
I mean, not creepy. Bailey had, I talk about this in the book a little bit, but Bailey had that one stalker at one point that was a little creepy. It was like a minor, I always say minor stalker, because there's like crazy stalkers, and then there's just like people that maybe don't have a social awareness about what they're doing, and then they become a little strange.
Yeah.
That was our situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you live in Texas. You've said that the thunderstorms there are the best. Describe a Texas thunderstorm for me.
So Texas weather is very volatile. So it can go from like the most beautiful sunshiny day, and then in the distance you see these dark kind of grayish green clouds rolling in, and you know it's just coming. And when I say coming, it's literally like a wall of water. Like 1 second you're dry, and the next second it's like torrentially raining. But always before, there's just a ton of really awesome thunder and really fun lightning up in the clouds. So it's just a great, like when I go to Utah, I miss the thunderstorms of Texas.
Okay, now you say grayish green clouds. Do you get tornadoes in Texas? I'm assuming yes.
We do, yeah. So the same clouds that produce the thunderstorms, if they're strong enough, they can start to swirl, right? And then it produces tornadoes, but it just doesn't happen very often. Like anyone that lives in the Midwest that deals with tornado warnings very often, you just get used to kind of keeping your eye on the weather. Like if you can see that there's going to be a bad storm, but the chance of a tornado is like super, super tiny.
So in Utah, the chance of a tornado is super tiny, but we've had just a handful that I can remember in my life. But the thing I remember about them is the green tint to the clouds, which does not come with like our regular thunderstorms.
Right.
So if I see green in the clouds, I'm like, oh, girl, it's coming.
Here,
like something bad's happening.
Here, green gray just means like strong storm coming, you know, like one that could potentially do hail or just really, really crazy torrential rain, but it doesn't necessarily mean tornado. So
do you get crazy hail?
Sometimes. I mean, we've lived here now, like, I guess we're going on 6 years, and we've only had, I would say, two storms that I remember producing like good size hail. And by good size, I mean like quarter, not like softball. So, I mean, again, it happens, just not very often.
Yeah, the hailstorms, like every kid in my neighborhood has a little PTSD from a hailstorm that happened probably 2 years ago. And it hit right when these poor elementary school kids, right when the bell rang and they were all getting out of school. And so where I pick up for carpool, they have to cross this the field behind the school. It was coming down so hard and fast. These kids didn't know what to do. They had their backpacks, they're crying. Like, I want to start crying talking about it. And I just like opened my car and just kids I didn't even know were jumping in because they didn't know where to go. And the sound of it was just traumatic, right? So if my kids are like, I know kids in the neighborhood have had the same issues. If they start hearing like, there's hail, that one like sticks out for them in a big way. And it was that big quarter size hail that was just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we get those. It's just, I think hail's one of those weird ones because it'll hail like in the city next to us, but it won't hit at my house. You know what I mean? So it's like super spotty.
Yes.
So, I mean, in Texas in general, there's always people every spring that get like car damage from hail, but it's not like you get car damage every year from hail. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Well, we've had the biggest winter. I'm such a nerd, and I I like daily, if not weekly, check what the Utah snowpack is. It's like my gauge for like how emotionally stable I should be feeling. I'm just concerned with like our water storage. I don't know. It's like my weird little tick. But we're at like 150 to 200% of normal across the state. We had so much snow, and now we're having so much rain. How was Texas this winter?
Texas was pretty mild this winter. It wasn't bad.
I think we took all your rain.
I mean, just the normal wintry. It wasn't even like super, super cold, which can be a bad thing because then we get bad bugs in the summer if it doesn't get super cold.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully this means we won't have bad bugs. But it's been just nonstop raining. It's raining as we speak. But there's the cutest little robin bird out my window who built a nest in my pine tree. And it's like my happiest moment of my day.
Uh-huh. Yep. Springtime in Texas is like that. The wildflowers come out, and there's nothing like Texas wildflowers in the springtime.
So I always call them the wrong things. Is it blue bonnets, blue bells?
Blue bonnets. Blue bonnets, yeah.
Okay. And you have blue bunny ice cream.
Yep.
Blue bonnet flowers, blue bunny ice cream.
Yep. Apparently they like blue.
Yes. So that is like on my bucket list. I need to get out for that wildflower season, but also eat the ice cream while I'm there.
Yeah. I mean, California's super bloom is killing it this year, right? Like, it's amazing.
Ugh,
but Texas
seriously.
looks like a mild version of that every spring. Like, not crazy super bloom, but like flowers everywhere spring.
If I'm to roll my dice, play some bets, I think Southern Utah and like Death Valley in Vegas, I feel a super bloom coming on because they also, like Southern Utah for us has had, I don't know, like 250% of normal.
Oh, wow.
How nerdy am I that I'm quoting you the percentages?
Wow. That's amazing, though. I wish I could get out to Cali for the super bloom because it was stunning.
Ah, same. And you know what? If it hits in Las Vegas or Southern Utah, I will get in my car and drive the 4 to 6 hours to go and see it. I just think it'll be worth it.
You should. It's like watching an eclipse, right? It's like a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, for real. Okay, so we've talked about the heartwarming part of Texas for you, one of the things that makes you love Texas. I want to talk about the heartwarming part of your childhood, something, that takes you back to being a kid. So this is our Ratatouille question, and this is the question that every guest gets. So it comes from one of the last scenes in the movie Ratatouille, where the grouchy food critic is reminded of his childhood because of a dish that he was served that was made by a rat. So what is the smell, the taste, or the experience that takes you right back to being a kid?
It's a smell, I think, for me. And it's the smell of like the wet earth after a rainstorm.
Yes.
And it takes me personally back to camping in the mountains in Utah. And my family grew up camping there. So we were always up with our tents or our motorhome and playing in the woods, and the smell of like the quaking aspen mixed with the pine trees, just the fresh air. I don't know. That's where I go every time.
Yeah. If we could bottle that smell, I would buy all the candles.
Yeah. Yep.
So good. So where was your guys' favorite place to camp?
Spruces up Big Cottonwood.
So you're the second guest who has mentioned Big Cottonwood, and I'm assuming the smell of that canyon specifically.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I go mentally, just because that's where we always camped.
Yeah. But you know what? There is a certain smell up that canyon that I don't think is anywhere else. So anyone who comes to Utah, put that on your list. Get up to the Spruces campground. Check it out.
Yep.
All right. So on our handy dandy little pre-interview form, I ask every guest what scares you the most about parenting. And your answer was seeing my worst qualities show up in my children.
Yep.
So I've never put that into words, but that right there is so real. So I was literally just thinking about it this morning. I have a child who so far through like junior high and high school always seems to have at least one teacher nemesis. And I'm responsible for it. Like that characteristic that comes from me.
Yep.
At times we struggle with authority and lack the ability to stop talking. He can't stand injustice of any sort. And I look at him, I relate so much to the fact that like he just can't stop. So tell me, what do you see in your kids that scares you the most?
For me, I have one child in particular that just has a really fiery temperament, which I always tell people like your best qualities are also your worst qualities. It's just dependent on how you're using them. So
oh my gosh, you just said like my exact parenting mantra. I even have it in my notes that I say this to comfort myself. It's that our children's worst, most annoying qualities are actually their greatest strengths.
Yep.
And it's just where we funnel them, right?
Yep. So for me, like my fiery temperament is also what makes me a real entrepreneur and a strong, aggressive businesswoman. And like it gives me the motivation to get up in the morning and challenge myself to do new things that are out of my comfort zone every day. But in a bad way, it can also be, the temperament that rubs people wrong or maybe isn't patient enough with people, maybe is just a little too aggressive or too self-assured even, with people. So I have one daughter in particular that I see that in, and it makes me sad because it makes me sad to see it in the negative ways because I understand and relate to how much of a struggle it will be her whole life because I've also dealt with that. But then at the same time, like it's also a gift. It just depends on how she chooses to use it.
And I think we get afraid that the gift won't like reveal itself in the same way that it did for us. But I think it does. It's part of their process, right? That they have to struggle with it and like tame it. That's where the strength comes from. But it is so frustrating to sit back. It's like watching somebody like take a test or play a board game where you know how to do it, but you can't go do it for them.
Yeah. I also think that same daughter is one that we don't necessarily get along as well as some of my other kids. And I think it's because we're so much alike, which is funny because I have another daughter that's more like my husband and she and him butt heads more. And I swear it's because they're more alike each other. It's like you're less tolerant of maybe what your own struggles are as well.
Yeah, it's the same way where I think it comes out in how we judge other people. The things we're the hardest on, like when we find ourselves judging somebody else, it's usually the thing we're the hardest on ourselves about.
Yes.
So it usually says more about us than it does about the person. And it's actually a really great way to, gauge, especially like when you're meeting people, it's a great way to gauge like where they're at, right? The stuff they bring up, you're like, oh, I see a little bit about you.
Yep. No, it's totally true.
That rage that my son has, it's not rage. When he was a toddler, I'd call it rage. Now it's just, I think he can't stand injustice, right? So even just last weekend, I dragged my family out to the Lamb and Wool Festival because, and you'd think I have preschoolers. I would just like, but I have like kids in, high school, junior high, elementary, but I just like had to go out to like little farm country and see the baby animals. And I super wanted to see the sheep be sheared. It's the most satisfying sight to see all that wool come off, right? Would they be sheep or lambs? This is a question. Are sheep and lambs the same thing?
Lamb is a baby.
Lambs are baby
right?
sheep?
And sheep is an adult.
Okay, there we go. I just had like a moment where I'm like, is my vocabulary straight?
I think so.
So we're out at that little festival. My son is at this little stall where there's a big horse and he's in the stall with this little like scraggly donkey type horse. And the big horse got irritated at the little horse and like bit him. And this little like tuft of fur came poofing out of the little horse, this little donkey buddy. I don't even know what he was. And my son, who's 16, was so mad. He was so mad at the big horse. He took all the food he was feeding the big horse and he took it to the little horse. And then I heard about this horse like 5 more times.
Oh my gosh.
That he was so upset. I like that he's concerned with that justice. It's just where he emotionally funnels that. But often, have you seen that Key and Peele sketch, The Substitute Teacher?
Yeah.
It's like when he and I get mad, and he goes, "Oh, you want to go to war, Balake?" And he like sweeps off his desk and like wants to overturn things in the room.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of where we go.
There's not a lot of middle ground. It goes swinging clear to the other side.
Yeah, like I'm mostly easy to get along with until I'm not.
Well, I think that's great though. Like think about that quality in him as an adult. If he's, in a position where he can be part of like upper management in a company, like how powerful that could be, for his under employees or a company that's like looking to do good in the world, because of that social injustice as well. Be awesome.
Yeah, he ultimately has and I think this about, and you probably are the same, with a lot of my kids, a lot. I have 3. You have a lot. You have 6.
Yeah.
But empathy
Yeah.
is a really big feeling to manage. And so I see, at least in my older 2, that like empathy can overcome them in ways and overwhelm them. And I think it's such a good thing. But again, another one of those things that you've got to learn to manage through your life. Do you have any like overly empathetic children?
I probably Paisley is my more empathetic, but she's so little still. It hasn't like manifested itself fully as an adult, But I really feel like that's a strength because we live in a world now where our kids are so self-centered, with social media and selfies and everything's about them or their truth or speaking their truth, as opposed to like the good of society as a whole.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I actually think that's a really amazing quality. If his empathy is so strong that he has a hard time not feeling for other people, that's probably going to be an awesome quality when he's older.
Yeah. We just got to rein it in a little bit.
Yeah. I can see how it would get overwhelming. Again, it's your greatest weakness and it's your greatest strength, just depending on how you let it handle.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Now, while we're talking a little bit about those heartstrings, Brooklyn and Bailey are off to college.
Yes, they are.
So you posted a video from your car last spring.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody talks about this video. Yes.
Because I cried through the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So senior parentitis, I will embed this in the show notes. I'll have a link there. I literally cried through the whole thing. What was senior year like for you as a mom?
Senior year as a parent is a roller coaster of emotions. I feel like it's just a lot of ups and downs. Like on one hand, your kids will totally drive you crazy and annoy you and you can't wait for them to be gone. And then the next day, something will happen and it'll hit you that it's like the last Christmas or the last Thanksgiving with them at home. And you'll just be like totally overwhelmed by it too. It's them and they do the same thing. I think they're feeling the same emotions just as a kid. They're feeling like that I can't wait to get out of here and be on my own. And then they're also feeling oh my gosh, can I do this? I'm so nervous. I'm so scared. I'm going to miss my family. So it's just like a lot of clashing emotions all the time, I feel like. And a lot of lasts. I feel like there's just like a finality to it. Mm-hmm. Like everything is the last first day of school, the last choir concert, the last, whatever it is. And so it's just like a ball of emotions the entire year.
My heart can barely even stand it. So my oldest is a sophomore and I'm already feeling this.
Yeah. Yep.
And what's weird is we're at the end of the year. So I also know a lot of the kids from my neighborhood and around who are seniors. And you have this whole thing where they start figuring out where they're going to college or what they're doing next. And back here in Utah, which is the capital of Mormondom, right? You've got a lot of kids who belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who are getting mission calls.
Yep.
So wherever you are in the world, I have got to think you've probably seen some young men or women cruising around your community with little black tags on, right? And they are out there for 2 years or 18 months. And these are our children.
Yep.
And so I used to get really excited for people when they got their mission calls. I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So now these senior boys are starting to get their mission calls and they are to crazy places. Like if I'm just looking around, I'll name Poland, South Africa, Madagascar, just all over the world, right? Kenya. And where I used to get excited, I see the videos on social media or hear from their parents about, oh, they got their mission call. Here's where it is. I like get terrified. I'm like, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. You're sending your child to the middle of Africa, or sad. And I just want to cry. And because it's coming close. If my
mm-hmm.
kids decide to go on missions, that's just like 2 years away. And the reality is starting to just punch me in the face.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Even just going to college is such a huge, I mean, they're just 19, 18. They don't really want to be home all the time. They don't really want to call mom and tell her everything anymore. And you
Ugh.
don't have those little daily check-ins like you did when they were home. When they'd come home and you'd be like, "How was your day? What'd you do? How's it going?" And they're there telling you all their stories about Joe Blow did this at lunchtime or whatever. And when they go away to college and or a mission,
Yeah.
that's no longer happening. They're having all those experiences without you, or choosing to only tell you a handful of things. But so it's a very weird transition to like have them leave and then feel that disconnect with them that wasn't there before.
And you know what? I'm not a helicopter parent, but like knowing like, oh, what'd you eat today? Like, did you eat enough?
Yeah.
What
Yep.
time did you get home? Like, you've been out in a car or on a date. And do I know that you like got tucked in okay? And I was such a brat when I moved out in college. And, I was just like, you don't need to know. Like, if my mom couldn't get a hold of me, I swear she'd start calling emergency rooms. And I was like, oh, you're such an overreactor, right? And
Yeah.
I will be
Yeah.
that parent that probably will dial up some ERs a couple times just to make myself feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now you can track them on your phone, so that would be better.
Ooh, yes. The blessings of technology.
Yes, one of the blessings. I mean,
Yes.
you can just spot check, right? Not like obsessively track, but like spot check and just see that they're okay if you know they're out late or whatever. But
So you can sleep
Yeah.
at night.
I mean, I don't even check it every night, but occasionally if I know they're out and about or they've been on the road coming back from Dallas, then yeah, I'll jump on and just spot check it, make sure they got home okay.
You're listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. We'll be back right after this.
If you're enjoying this topic today, might I recommend a few others from the archive? Check out episode 14 with Hannah Slyfox, another big YouTube personality, where we talk about their 5-day whirlwind romance, making marriage work, and moving through the different seasons life brings. You can also check out our 3-part Tech Reset series, episodes 7, 8, and 9. They're short 15 minutes or less episodes on some of the screen time rules that have helped the most at our house. Also, listen to one of our recent interviews, episode 32, with Kurt Beidler, General Manager of Kids and Family for Amazon, on the screen time you can actually say yes to. All those links will be in the show notes. I think that should keep you busy for a while. You can find those links and more at todaysmama.com/podcast.
And now back to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher.
Okay, now you said having seniors is like trying to hold on to water.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's parenthood in general. So describe that for me. Describe that feeling.
Well, I just think it's the feeling of, I mean, when you're holding water, it doesn't matter how tightly you cup your hands together. As soon as you put water in it, it inevitably finds a way to start escaping through your finger cracks or your palms or whatever. And that's just basically childhood in general, but especially I think you feel that your senior year. It's just like it's slipping out of my hands and there's nothing I can do to stop it. And then it's going to be gone.
And it moves so fast.
Yeah. Yep.
So I have a theory. We carry these little people as moms, we carry them in our bodies, and then we give birth. And you have this whole experience where it's all about connecting, right? This bonding and this attachment. And that really only, it's like we have such that short time because it's that first couple months maybe is what I'm going to give it. And we're attached. And then from there, it all is a process of gradually letting go. Whether it's letting them sleep through the night or sit up on their own, they start crawling, they start walking, they go to preschool, kindergarten, all these little things that are just like baby steps in letting go. And I hate it, actually.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. So parenthood really, as much as we feel like it's all about attachment, it's this like process of letting go and letting them like grow up and become their own people.
I think the other hardism too is that I don't think they fully appreciate that. It seems like it's cyclical, right? Like as a 19-year-old, I remember not appreciating my mom being involved in my life then too. But then it's like once you have your own children, you kind of come back to that, I feel like, and you're like, oh, this is what you were talking about, Mom. Or, oh, these were those feelings that you tried to tell me when I was 19 and I didn't want to listen, you know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that it kind of like cycles itself back when they're older.
And I've had a few moments where I've been like, oh my gosh, this is how my parents felt about me, and
Yep.
have this whole new appreciation. Like when I did first move out and go to college, I'd come home for Sunday dinner or whatever, and my dad would just be teary-eyed and be like, come back. Like I
Oh,
didn't realize what I really put him through.
yeah.
So did you find the cure for senioritis? You're still alive. Am I still going to be alive?
You'll live through it, but it's definitely different. And I think you have to, I mean, I always say like, yeah, it's like having a baby. You know, I feel like when you have a baby, it takes a good like 5 months to kind of get your feet under yourself again and like adjust to having this new person in your home and get them into like your normal routine. And I feel like that's what happens when they go to school too, is it takes a couple months to like refigure out the new dynamic with the other kids, with some missing. Or I mean, our house is much, much, much quieter, you know, with Brooklyn and Bailey gone. And in some ways I love that. And in some ways I hate it. So it just depends on the day.
Yeah, that quiet you're talking about, I think that's one of the things I'm afraid of one day is when my house goes just totally quiet. I'm going to have to maybe get like a pack of dogs. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you love it. Like, truly, there are days that I'm like, this is so nice. You know, it's so quiet. And we can just go in our room at a normal hour in the evening. And the other kids are kind of fending for themselves. Where the twins, I feel like, they were so animated. The house, when they come home, even still from college, like the noise level doubles, even though it's just two of them coming home. They are so animated and they're so full of life that it's like this completely different dynamic, and they're so chattery. And then when they go away, it like calms and it's quiet again, you know? And so there are days I love it. And there are days I'm like, oh, I miss that. I miss all their stories.
Yeah. Are there things that have changed about your relationship now that, I mean, we're almost to the end of freshman year, right? What has changed about your relationship with those two?
I definitely feel like I trust them more than I did at the beginning of the year. Like, I still think at the beginning of the year, I was like worried about them all the time, or, you know, just monitoring more, like still a little more heavy handed on the monitoring. And now I don't hardly at all. It's just like, you know what, you guys are, you know, you're almost done with your freshman year of college. You guys have it kind of figured out, like, you know what not to do and what to do. And they've made some mistakes along the way, and we've had to be there to support them through those mistakes. And I can see that they're learning too. So they're getting smarter as well.
Yeah. What's nice so far about parenting is, at least still in high school, is they're making mistakes and you're able to be there and be involved. And then college is really like the next step. So if you've built a relationship where you can communicate with each other, like expect those mistakes, right? It's just the messy part of life and they're totally okay.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, the goal, I guess, is in the next 4 years that they have some of those experiences and learn and grow from them on their own. And then when they're ready to start settling down or whatever, then they kind of come back around to being your friend again, you know,
Yeah.
with their own new independence.
Okay, well, let's talk business for a second, because Brooklyn
Okay.
and Bailey are very much business owners just like you, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work? You're running businesses together from a distance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's tricky. It's a lot of time management and scheduling is what it is, to be honest. So right now they try to do about 20 hours a week, full-time work, as well as running a full-time school schedule. That's all we can block it out. Every semester we sit down and we plug in their classes, and then we block work hours around it so that the whole team here knows when they're on work or when they're in class, and we can ping them accordingly, you know, like if we need to loop them into phone calls or convos, we know when we can do that. And then they come home roughly once a month on the weekend and try to film a couple videos so that they don't have to film all of them while they're down at school.
So are they just filming each other, or do you have a crew that goes down and helps?
When they film down at Waco, they are filming themselves, or they have friends that help. When they're filming here, it just depends. Sometimes they're doing it on their own, and sometimes some of our team is doing it. Depends on the film.
You guys have so many balls in the air. Just take a minute and name all of your projects for me.
Cute Girls Hairstyles YouTube channel. We have Brooklyn and Bailey's YouTube channel. We have Camry's YouTube channel. We have a channel called Millennial Moms and a channel called Squared, and then a kids channel as well. But we're not doing much with some of those right now. We've kind of iced a couple of them. Brooklyn and Bailey have their merch line, which includes their mascara line, Lash Next Door.
Which is so good. I have tested and tried. It's probably, I'm not saying this just because you're my friend. And because I was able to try it out. It is my favorite mascara I have ever tried.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It took us 2 years to develop it. So, I mean, we really put it through the ringer.
Yeah, it's so good.
What else? I just published the book, Viral Parenting. At the end of this year, I have a hairline coming out in a big box store that I can't name yet. So I'm working on that actively.
And you have some other, I don't know, you guys have scrunchies?
Yeah. That's all part of Brooklyn and Bailey's merch line is scrunchies,
Okay.
hair accessories, their mascara. They have their little stampers.
And those stampers are so cute. Talk about those.
The stampers are like little temporary tattoo stampers. So they have like maybe a heart or a star on them. And it's almost like an eyeliner type liquid. You just stamp on your skin and then it will stay until you wash it off. So it's really fun for things like Coachella season or, anything like that. Just fun.
So how do you keep your sanity amidst all of that? Like my goal right now is trying to figure out how to focus on just one thing, right? I feel like my focus is so split between so many different things. But I mean, you've got 6 kids and then all of those businesses, those are like lots of other children. How do you manage it all?
I mean, we have a good team that helps for sure. I can't do it all by myself. So we hire people to help where we can, and we have a good management team and good contractors that help with various projects we're on. And then honestly, I think if I were going to say like that's our Achilles heel, it would be that. It's just that we're very scattered in our focus. And so sometimes it does feel like we aren't fully focused on any one project at any given time.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's something I'm ready to put a knife into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the hard thing.
I mean, we did kind of ice a couple of our channels last year. So it's like slowly every year I feel like we reevaluate, like, do we still want to do this project? Is it still worth our time? Is the ROI on it reasonable? And there's probably a couple that we ice, and then there's a few that we bring on, but we're still in the growth pattern for our company in general. So we're still kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. So unfortunately, we kind of have to keep trying new and different things. And then I think the end game goal is that, 1 or 2 of them do really, really well. And then over time, we would slowly whittle down to the 2 that are doing the very best.
Yeah. What does your home office look like?
So our office in Dallas or my actual house?
So actual house, and then you recently just got that other office, right?
Yeah, it was earlier this year. Well, earlier.
Yeah, so talk about
last year,
talk about your home office first, and then tell us about the move to a bigger office.
Home office. Sean has an office that he works in, like just an office space in the house, and I'm what I call a floater. I don't love having like a designated workspace. I don't know why. I tend to prefer to just honestly work from like the kitchen table or from the couch or from my bed or whatever. It's just sort of dependent on my mood and if I want to be by the fire. Some days I work from the kitchen because I need to keep an eye on what's happening with the kids. So I kind of do a floating home office.
And I actually am the same. I have a desk and a desktop computer, and I do very specific things from that place. Like right now when I do podcasts, like that's where I'm at right now. But it's almost like, just for my own sanity too, it's almost like I have different workstations around the house that I rotate throughout the day.
Yep.
And I've said this before, I take my phone calls. I try to do those out on a walk.
Yeah.
On my earbuds, but I totally am moving around. So where are you right now in this very moment? Where are you?
In this very moment, I am sitting in Ryland's closet on the floor.
Yes.
Which, I mean, if you've ever done voiceover work, right, or podcasts, you know that like clothing and carpet absorb the sound really well. And so it creates great audio. So when we do voiceover and stuff like that, a lot of times we end up in a closet. My closet has hardwoods, so I can't go in there.
Yes. And this is also when my kids were younger, that was a hiding place for taking a call I super had to take.
Yep.
And needed some quiet or was trying not to wake them up in a nap or whatever. But like the closet is a serious part of my business workflow.
Yep. The closet or the bathroom. I would lock myself in my bedroom and then lock myself in the bathroom for big phone calls so that it was like 2 doors deep from the kids.
Yes, dude. The realities of working from home.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk screen time a little bit, because this is just one of the many projects you've been working on. You've come out with a new book called Viral Parenting. What will parents find in that book?
I think they'll find in the book just tools and techniques that they can use to incorporate in their own family for opening conversations about technology with their kids or learning some of the basic uses of technology, and also just tips and tricks on things that Sean and I have seen or done that have worked with our kids, But I think they'll also be surprised to find that the book in general is all about managing the perfect balance between analog and digital and finding that sweet spot, that it can't be all one or all the other. It has to be kind of a nice mix.
So we recently did an event together, the Tech Reset Workshop, which was so much fun. I learned that you super love chocolate.
I do love chocolate.
Like a good friend, I should be shipping you more mint chocolate truffles.
It's specifically the Utah truffles, just for the record. Like, I'm not usually a chocoholic, but those specific chocolates, and I just never get them here in Texas, So it was like such a treat to have them that I just like kept eating them.
They're so good. Now, you like the milk chocolate. I am a dark chocolate mint fan.
Okay. Yep. I like dark chocolate too. So, I like both.
All right. I'll mix it up. My shipment to you will have a mixed variety.
There you go.
But at that event, you talked about the difference between analog and digital parenting that you just mentioned. And I love the way that you broke that down. So break it down here. What is the difference between analog and digital parenting? And how does that affect us?
So traditionally, the people that are around our age or our parenting group right now are typically analog people that were raised with an analog world. So we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, or we got them when we were like maybe in high school or older.
End of high school, beginning of college for me, right? Like we're both class of 96.
Yep.
So I think our high school experience, there were some kids walking around with pagers maybe.
Yeah.
In high school.
Or maybe their daddy had a cell phone in his car, like one of those giant brick ones. Yeah. And you were like, whoa, your dad has a phone in his car.
Totally. My dad had one.
Yep.
I felt cool because of it.
Yep, exactly. But I think that we've all adapted very quickly to digital because we were young enough that when that stuff started happening, we were able to pick it up, we were able to learn it, we were able to incorporate it into our daily use.
We adapted quickly.
Yes. Our kids, however, are being raised fully digital. So kids nowadays are getting phones when some of them 8, 9, 10, very young. They're the kids that you see in the restaurants that are 2 swiping through iPad videos they're just constantly inundated with digital technology from the time they are born. And so it's literally that they don't live in a world that exists without that technology.
They don't have a reference point for what the world was like before at all, which blows my mind sometimes. And sometimes I wish I could just go spend a day back in 1996 or I don't know, 1987, whatever it was, just to feel what it was like to not have all that technology. We were making a big deal then about TV screen time though. So I feel like screen time's always been an issue. Maybe we watched a whole lot more cartoons, right?
Well, yeah, I think you probably did watch cartoons after school, but it was like the 1 channel or 2 channels that had cartoons after school.
Yeah, what were your after school cartoons?
Oh gosh, Saved by the Bell was a big one for me. I still loved like the Brady Bunch and Little House on the Prairie. I know they're a little older than I am, but they were still running even then.
Oh, they were so good. I'd watch a lot of DuckTales after school.
DuckTales. Yeah, I remember DuckTales.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, totally. That song you can never get rid of.
Yep.
I'll sing it to my kids sometimes just for fun. And then like the Smurfs. There was a lot of really high quality cartoon entertainment back in the day.
But I remember when my dad I remember when my dad would go to a movie store, right? Like Blockbuster, but it was even pre-Blockbuster, and rent the movie and the machine at the same time and like bring it home and like plug the VCR player into our television and we would like watch a movie. And then he would have to return the whole thing the next day. Okay,
so do you know how much the VCRs were back in the very first VCRs? Do you know what they cost?
I have no idea.
They were like
probably a couple $100.
They were like $1,100.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's why my dad was renting it instead of buying it.
There. And dude, my parents decided to live big on that one. And we're like, it's the first thing we ever financed was a VCR.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't believe. I had no idea how forward facing we were as a family.
Well, my dad invested in like the first run of Macintosh. So go figure. Like,
oh my gosh.
Like my dad had this set of like the trains that you see at Christmas, like the old school hardcore train sets that he'd had from when he was a child. And my parents saw these new things called computers coming out. And my dad was like, wow, I feel like this is like the wave of the future. And so he sold his train set to get the first computer our family ever had. And so like that was my first introduction as a child to a computer, was like in the early days of Macintosh.
It's in your genetics. You're an early adopter.
I guess. I mean, that was my dad, very forward thinking on that one. And still, I think back on it now and like my heart hurts a little for his train set. I'm like, oh, Dad. And he was like, I know, but I just felt like this was something you kids needed to have exposure to.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, I remember, I don't know, maybe we were just in college. It was like the late 90s. I'll have to Google this and fact check myself. But the movie Minority Report.
Yeah. Yep.
I just thought that looked so pretend. I was like, that technology will never happen. That's ridiculous. And even thinking that we could have like video calls with each other, I'm like, science doesn't exist. That's ridiculous. It'll never exist. And we're so far beyond that now.
Yep, it's true.
So that is digital parenting, right? Like this world where all these things that we could have maybe never even conceived of and so much more to come exist. And we've got to learn how to parent around that. And nobody's made the rules yet.
Well, because we weren't raised with the rules. Like our parents didn't have to do that with us because it didn't exist. And so now we're in this place of basically like the wild, wild west of parenting with technology. And it's like, what are the rules? What is the perfect age for cell phones for our kids? Are we harming them if we give them to them when they're younger? All of those things that we're now testing and evaluating and talking about.
Well, I've said this before on the podcast, and I'll say it again. I think it is our generation's job as parents. It's our responsibility to iron this out for future generations, to start to bring the order to the space for parents that has not existed to this point for us, right? So that our kids and parents right now who are just having kids, that they're going to have an easier run at this than, statistically has been playing out for this generation of kids who are struggling with more anxiety, higher rates of suicide, depression, all of that stuff, which has a lot of ties to the way that we're managing our technology right now. So as a parent, I feel a big responsibility right now. And I think you do too, because that's probably why you wrote this book, is to, bring some order to this space.
Yeah, bring some order and also to shine a light on some of the positivity, because I feel like it gets a negative rap sometimes, which rightfully so, right? There are definitely pitfalls and definitely scary things in this space. There are bad players in this space, but there are also genuinely good players and really amazing things that you can do with your technology. And so just like the qualities in us can be our worst and our best things, just depending on how we use them, same applies to technology. It can be a really amazing, awesome tool that we can utilize to make our lives easier and more fun and interesting and build a community and like learn things about ourselves, or it can be this really negative space. And unless we're having that conversation with our kids, oftentimes I feel like they tend to fall into the negativity, and then it's like a vicious cycle of fear. Like as parents, we're like, oh, it's so scary. I'm just going to take them off altogether. And so I think one of the parts of the book was like, look, yes, we're navigating a new space. Yes, we don't know how to do it exactly right now. But I do believe that if we're having conversations and teaching our children, like literally every day, discussing these things, it's almost like their personal hygiene. We need to be having daily conversations with our kids to teach them how to use these tools correctly. Then I think our kids are going to navigate that space in a good way and really just do amazing things with it.
We live in a world where so much emotional intelligence is required as parents, and that there's a lot required of our children to navigate this stuff in ways that I don't think previous generations, I don't think it was demanded in the way that it is now to navigate this world. And that's big. It's like almost an evolution of parenting where, way back in the day, it was just like, can I keep you alive? Right.
Yeah.
And as humans now, we've evolved all the way through hundreds of years to this point where it's just like, no, to thrive in this world, you are going to need emotional intelligence, not only to navigate technology, but also I think it will be demanded of our kids, not only in their relationships, but in the workplace. That will be the differentiator. And so to me, that's the opportunity we have to teach our kids, is the emotional skills and like habit forming to thrive in this world.
No, I agree.
So much of your life involves social media. I mean, more than probably the average
Yeah,
Joe.
definitely. Yeah.
So what's been the best part of sharing your life on YouTube with basically the world?
I mean, the best part has just been the community. I mean, we get to reach out to people that live all the way across the world and have something in common with them. I mean, it makes the world a very, very small place, which is awesome. You know, and you can share ideas and thoughts and feelings and stories. And a parent that lives in South Africa can totally relate to something I'm saying in the United States because we're both parents. And that's amazing and fun. I think it also just the positivity of sharing things that are important to us. I mean, sharing like goodness and kindness and giving people a safe place to be online to sort of counteract the bad players, you know, being one of the good players has been really positive.
Yeah, so if all those good players left, you're left with a pretty dark and tangly internet, right?
Yes. Yep.
So that's an important part, is that we all have a really important role to play in bringing the goodness to technology and social media and everything that happens online.
I think you see that same messaging resonate through life in general. And I mean, I don't want to get too like, but I think any religion that you belong to, or even if you don't believe in a specific religion, believes in like the light versus dark and the good versus evil. You know, we see it reflected in life. We see it with winter and summer, and we see it with movies that we watch. I mean, that same theory is always playing in our lives in general. And I feel like it's the same thing on the internet. You know, it's like you can find the worst of the worst and you can find the best of the best. And you just have to know how to navigate to which place you want.
Yeah. And we said this in the workshop that we did together. And I know I've said it on the podcast before, but 99% of our problems will come from technology and 99% of the solutions will come from technology. And we get to drive that bus.
That's true. I mean, you get to pick how you use it and what your kids are doing on it and what apps and tech and things that you're using to put in place to help monitor your kids from the very same tech that could get them into trouble.
Something else we talked about in the workshop was being a creator versus a consumer of technology and media. I would say you guys live pretty heavily in the creator space. So talk to me. What is that difference and what does that mean for kids and families?
I think just realizing that there is a difference is the first step. I mean, your kids can look like they're being consumers on their phones or devices all day long, and then you'll discover later that they were actually being a creator. So giving your kids the space to do that. But basically, we try to really encourage our kids that if they're going to be using technology, that they're also creating something. So obviously with Brooklyn and Bailey and Camry, they're doing their YouTube videos, they're building businesses, they're driving, you know, marketing, they're learning a skill, they're learning entrepreneurship, they're learning how to build a brand. Like they are actually learning and growing on the same tools that other people are just idly surfing. With Camry, one of the bonuses to her first Instagram account was that we started to see in her this little magical photographer starting to pop up. Like she just has a natural eye for things that I would never have caught with her phone. And so we started investing a little bit more money in really great cameras and some good lenses for her. And, you know, her photography skill and love for that has really developed. And now, of course, she knows how to use Illustrator and Photoshop and, you know, do all kinds of things. And she's building her brand around selling stickers and presets. But again, she is using all of those tools to do creating and be creative with, as opposed to simply consuming. So I think it's that. With Dax, we bumped into him wanting to be online all the time and playing games like Minecraft or things. And we started encouraging him instead we put him in a little iCode class, which is like a little basic, it's like a karate thing where they have like different levels and you climb through the levels, but it's all about computer coding. And so we started putting him in that. And now he's been doing that for 5 or 6 years. And I mean, he's working with Java and Raspberry Pi and like coding apps and websites and things I can't even begin to understand. And he's 10.
And your brain is engaged in a completely different way when you're being a creator.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the stuff he's doing is actually really productive and probably helping him, you know, grow and develop skills and like really healthy neural pathways. It requires focus. It's not just that complacent kind of scroll. It's problem solving and you're very mentally engaged compared to swiping, you know, eternally on social media, right?
Yeah.
So with your kids being as engaged as they are, how do you ensure that they, and I mean, this is their business, right? They have to be engaged. How do you assure that they get a break or that analog time actually comes into their lives?
I mean, I don't know how it plays out for everybody, but we really make sure that we try to do at least one trip a year where there's no tech. So whether we go on a cruise or we go up to the mountains or something that like forces us to be offline, which I think is just a really healthy way to kind of keep them grounded and like keep their feet on the ground, like in strong analog moments. But also what I found was that when my kids are actively creating versus just consuming, they do naturally want those breaks. So like my girls will get sick of being online because it feels like work to them.
Because it will actually wear you out, right?
Yeah. And it becomes like it's their job or it's work. Does that make sense? And so then they aren't as apt to just sit there and idly consume it either because it's part of their job.
Yeah. So it's a natural result of being a creator is that it requires so much of your input that there comes a natural break to your usage.
You're listening to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher. We'll be back right after this.
Let's talk about another one of our favorite parental control apps, Bark. Bark's affordable, award-winning service proactively monitors text messages, YouTube, emails, and 24 different social networks for potential safety concerns, so busy parents can save time and gain peace of mind. 2.5 million children are protected by Bark. 16 school shootings have been prevented. This is verified by the FBI, and 10,000 severe self-harm situations have been detected. Use the code Today's Mama, TODAYS MAMA, and get 10% off your account for the life of your account. That adds up. You can check all that out at bark.us.
And now back to the Today's Mama podcast with your host, Rachel Hersher.
So with all that, all these little dark parts of technology that we talk about so much in social media, where do you think parents are going wrong right now?
Two ways. I feel like you have the group of parents that are still like, oh, my kids aren't on social media. Or, oh, I don't let my kids have social media. And their kids are like 15 or 16 years old. And those parents scare me because like even if their kid doesn't have social media at home where their parents can see it, they can go to school and access it on their computers through Google Docs. They can go to their friend's house and access it through the neighbor's phone. I mean, so like their kids are probably having more touch points than they think they're having to technology. And then they're not having the convos because their kids are quote unquote safe, right? So they're just not talking about it. And then when problems arise, those kids aren't equipped to deal with what they're now seeing. The second group of parents are the ones that give their kids phones when they're like so young. And then they're just like, hey, here's your phone. And don't really take the time to teach or train or adequately prepare their child for owning that device or that phone. So both parents are ultimately doing what they think is best for their kid, but in a way doing a huge disservice to the child by just not having simple conversation.
Simple conversations and also educating ourselves as parents enough to be able to have those simple conversations, right?
Yep, exactly.
So you mentioned ages of cell phones. I think lots of people are coming to different conclusions for what the right age is. What's your opinion?
Listen, I'm not going to put an age on actually having a cell phone. I think that completely varies on the situation. But I think ultimately what you'll find is that parents give their kids their first cell phone because they want to know where they are. And I think you can do that without also giving them social media. There is a difference there. I also always tell parents, like, legally, according to the platforms and COPPA laws, kids are not supposed to be on the social media platforms till they're 13. So if your child is under 13 and on those platforms, like, you've actually subverted what the legal law says and the COPPA laws suggest. So, I mean, I do think there's wisdom in keeping your kids off social media until around 13. But I feel like as far as cell phones go, it's every parent's decision.
You know, and you mentioned COPPA laws, and I would say there's so many kids who get on before that time with their parents knowing. And I know I'm going to sound so judgy right now, But what are we teaching our kids about laws and guidelines that exist out there when we say, all right, well, we will together lie about your age on this platform. You have my consent. I think that's a big deal when it comes to that. So I know it sounds super harsh. It's just one of those things I think we sweep under the rug. I think that guideline is there for a reason. And if you ask me, if that's the bare minimum, right, is 13. Then you have to use your emotional intelligence and come in and say, how is my kid? Do I have a child that's prone to anxiety?
Right.
If you answer yes, then I'm going to say, maybe like 16 is a better target for this kid. Or if I've got a kid who has an addictive personality, I'm going to push this back a little bit. So then, you've got the bare minimum, but then you've got to come in and use your emotional intelligence as a parent and say, what's best for my specific child? And the hard part is, and the really crappy part for a lot of parents, is that rule or guideline is going to be different for every one of your kids based on who they are.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about this in the book. Like, we gave a cell phone to Rylan when she turned 13, and then discovered later that she was semi-bullying another girl from school via text. And we immediately removed the cell phone and determined that she was obviously not adequately mature enough to handle what she would need to deal with when it came to texting. And so we took it away from her for 6 to 8 months and tried again later when she was closer to 14, So I think it definitely does vary on the child and their natural instincts and their natural personality traits. And definitely, as a parent, using that emotional intelligence to determine that for your child.
And I think you've got to be willing to change things up. Like you said, you took a step back. It wasn't like, oh, too late, we gave her the phone. It was like, no, like, hit the reset button. We're going to try again later. We've got some other things to cover. And that's okay. Like, if we have to go back and say, as parents, we made a mistake, or we've got to change something, and that's okay. And here's what we're going to do. Plan B, plan C. It requires just a lot of like tweaking the dials as you go.
Yep.
When it comes to cell phones, you said, it's different for every kid. We've laid out lots of examples of I've got a friend whose daughter is diabetic. She's 7. The app she has that works on an iPhone that monitors her insulin levels all day long is amazing. And it's sending data to her mom all day long in terms of where she's at and if there's an issue that she needs to perk her ears to because her child's in public school. So because her 7-year-old has an iPhone in her hands, doesn't necessarily she has a phone. She's still gone and set the environment so that really it exists to be a tool for diabetes, right? So it has a purpose. You and I have talked about how for parents and kids who they're in a divorced a situation where they're dealing with divorce, that can be tricky because parents need to reach their kids. And so there's a different set of kind of negotiating and rules and boundaries that goes with that's totally different for that family, right? So every situation is going to be a little different, which is why it's hard to make some universal, rules on how exactly things should work.
I agree. I do think the schools are starting to have that conversation, though. I mean, I know at least out here, and I'm hearing it across the country, that schools are beginning to have the conversation of when can a child bring a phone to school, at what age? And should they be locked up? Should they be pouched? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, should they only be used at recess, or should they not be used at recess because we want them running around on the playground? So I do think like over the next 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see schools like actually setting some more hard line type. Obviously, your friend with the diabetes isn't going to be the child that they're going to be like, she can't bring a phone to school.
Yep.
They're going to make a medical exception for her, just like kids that carry medical equipment or medicine all the time. I do think that there might be schools getting more involved in this conversation than they are right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, cell phones are absolutely such a distraction to our kids' education.
Yeah, I mean, they are, but at our school, like, they're completely fully integrated. I mean, my kids are using Google Docs, and I mean, they don't do homework anymore. They don't carry books. Everything's online. And so their phones, especially at the high school level, become a very integral part of their learning.
And I like that you said high school level.
Yeah.
Because I think that's when our kids get a little smarter about what they're doing. My daughter sent me a photo, again, her using her phone in class, of a couple boys who had stacked their folders up and lined their phones up with March Madness during science class.
Yeah. Again, I think, and that's what the conversation is starting to be like. Is it appropriate after sixth grade? Is it appropriate to bring a phone after eighth grade? Like the schools are starting to have more of those conversations and determine what the overarching rules should be. But I mean, I don't really see me personally, and I know there's an exception here or there, but I don't really see any huge benefit to kids that are in elementary school having a phone on campus. I don't see that they're doing things online with their schoolwork, and I don't think that it really serves to benefit anybody, at the elementary school level.
Yep, I agree. And in high school, they're doing things with, do you guys do Kahoot? That's an app or platform that they use a lot in class for like quizzes and things that, they all need a phone to participate.
Yeah, my kids do. I think it's Quizlet out here that they're using instead of Kahoot. But yeah, same type of thing. They're taking like online classes in class on their devices. I mean, they're using them all the time.
Well, the cell phone rules at our house, again, acknowledging that this is going to look different at anyone else's house, but it's that 8th grade for a phone. My youngest, my first two got our old iPhones, which if I could go back in time, I would have just started with a flip phone at that point. But we did lock them down pretty good. My youngest will be 8th grade for a flip phone, 10th grade for a smartphone, and that's kind of where we're gonna play it. And again, I know everybody's different, but that's kind of the consensus that I've come to. And when it comes to screen time for my kids who are not YouTube stars, we're shooting for about 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that's the target. That's not to say we're hitting that all the time, right? But that's what we're shooting for on kind of the non-required things. Like I'm not counting that time at school, when they're having to use their phone for something, but that's the goal we're shooting for.
Yeah. And in my house, we shoot for right around 8th grade /13 for a phone. And typically we do give them social media at the same time, but it's heavily monitored for the first couple years, like heavily monitored.
Yep. And if you're not ready to play that role as a parent and to be that involved, right, then regardless if your child might be emotionally mature enough and ready, then together you're not ready.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes that parental involvement to teach them how to move through that world in a way that they're going to end up with some decent habits.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. What do you want people to know about YouTube? You spend a lot of time there. There's been a lot of bad news about YouTube in the last few months. I've certainly cast it as a modern day devil at times.
Yeah. Listen, YouTube is it's a consumer-based platform. I mean, like anybody anywhere can upload content, right? It's not a closed platform. It's not like Disney, where Disney is creating and producing all of the content themselves and running it through the Disney filter. That is not YouTube. YouTube can be accessed by anybody who wants to put up anything. And now YouTube tries to filter it to some degree, but there's so many bazillion minutes of footage going up every single minute. They literally just can't keep up with it. And so then they write those algorithms that are, sometimes not as good as they should be to try to track and keep things under like a check. But ultimately, I think YouTube is a good platform. I think they're the most creator-friendly platform that there is out there still to date, especially as far as like monetarily. YouTube still is the number one. So YouTube's a great place. There's just like anything else, bad players in a good space.
Yeah, definitely. And what can parents do to make YouTube a safer place if they're spending time there with their kids, or if they know their kids are spending time there?
I mean, obviously they can use the YouTube Kids app, but even that isn't like foolproof. So I always tell parents, like, if they really want to be completely foolproof with YouTube videos, make their own channel and then create a playlist where they put anything they want their child that is approved to watch into a playlist, and then only have their kids play, like, watching out of that playlist. That will keep it from popping up random videos to the kids. It will just keep playing the stuff in the playlist. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's really smart.
So then it's like a closed circuit. Like, you can put them into that playlist and know they're going to stay put. Where if you just put them onto YouTube in general, it's always popping or feeding them different things depending on what it's serving.
I have a friend who's created a private account, and they have their playlist of family videos. And that's what their kids go and watch. And she knows, she's made it so they'll stick in that playlist, and that's somewhere that they spend time on YouTube.
Yep. I agree.
Okay, so if you could tell parents to do 3 things that will make an immediate impact in their home on their screen time habits, it'll make their lives better, what's the low-hanging fruit? What can they do?
I mean, get your child's passwords. Like always, always, always have your child's passwords so that you can access and spot check and check up on them, and make sure that that's like an expectation in your home that you're going to be in and out of their phones and in and out of their, it's not their private space. There's no such thing as digital privacy. So the child should not have that expectation ever. If they're in there texting to their friends, you should be able to see what they're texting.
Amen.
I think the next one would be setting up screen time or digital well-being if you're using an Android.
Yep.
I think that gives you a lot of insight on how much time you're spending on your phones and where you and your child are spending the time on your phones. And it might give you more of the ability to like kind of have that moment of realization of like, wow, I need to be better about monitoring my time and their time and backing off on certain apps.
And in some ways, those tools gamify things a little bit in the sense that gamify is probably not the right word. But like my daughter texted me the other day, my 15-year-old, and she said, "Oh my gosh, Mom, guess how much screen time I spent today?" And I was like holding my breath. Oh, how much? And she's like, 44 minutes. Right. And she was like so pumped about how low it was and like trying to keep it low. So for her, it became this place where she can check on what her target is. She's invested. She's able to see it and kind of track how she's doing.
Yeah.
But it also gives her really good feedback that I don't have to when she looks and kind of sees a high number on a day and cringes a little and knows that she wants to reel it in.
The third one I would probably say is put a cell phone contract in place immediately, like as a family, whatever that contract looks for you. I have one in my book, but certainly there's plenty available online. I know you've talked about them before. We have friends that have other downloads that you can totally access and use those too.
And what kinds of things are in your cell phone contract?
In our cell phone contract, we have things from just basic phone like usage, like simple things like the phone has to be kept in good condition and it has to be charged, to social etiquette, like you will not text your friends mean things. If you are getting texted mean things, you will notify your parents. To things like that belong to the parents as well. Like there's responsibilities for the parents. Things like you can't overreact when your child comes to you and tells you for the first time that they've seen pornography online. Like you can't freak out. You have to be calm, So we try to write it so that it's a good give and take between the child and the parent, and making sure that the parents and the kids both feel like they have rights in the contract.
I like that. Now, you've shared a lesson that I think is totally relevant to how we move forward trying to change our habits or change anything in our households. And you left this quote in my little pre-interview form that we have. But you said, "Tomorrow is a new day with no mistakes in it." So what does that mean for you as you look at a more hopeful approach to the way we deal with screen time and technology moving forward?
That comes from Anne of Green Gables, if you don't know where that's from.
Oh, I love that.
I feel like I put that on there, not necessarily with tech, but I just feel like in general, we're really hard on ourselves, and we're really hard that we're not being perfect all the time, or we see our mistakes reflected in our children, or we see a failure at work, and it's really hard not to come home and just be like really down and really discouraged. And so I love that one because it's just a reminder that today might have sucked, but tomorrow's a new day, and tomorrow can be a great day, and tomorrow can be awesome and hopeful, and you can do something right. And just always pressing for today was lousy, or I did this wrong, or I yelled at my children and I shouldn't have, but tomorrow I'm going to be better. I'm going to do better.
And I think that message especially applies to those parents out there that are overwhelmed by maybe how they've set things up so far, right? I've talked to a lot of parents who say, "Oh my gosh, it's too late. I've totally screwed them up. Maybe there's hope for my younger kids. We've already, let the horse out of the stall. There's no going back." But there is. We have tomorrow's a new day with no mistakes in it. We can tweak things. We can fix things. We can make new choices. So I love that. Tomorrow's a new day with no mistakes in it.
Start again. Do better. Try to be better, right? Just every day.
Yeah. All right, Mindy, where can everyone find a copy of Viral Parenting?
Any of the places that sell books. So Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, any of those.
Okay. And if people want to follow you online, what's the best place?
Instagram is at Mindy McKnight, and YouTube is Cute Girls Hairstyles.
Okay, and are they going to see the senioritis video over on Cute Girls Hairstyles?
Yes, that's where that is. Yep.
I know. Everybody be prepared to cry. Like I said, I'll embed it in the show notes.
That's awesome.
Okay, Mindy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I wanted to be your very first podcast interview, and I got lazy and I was beat to the punch. I'm so mad, but I'm so glad we got a chance to catch up today. So I'm hoping I'll be seeing you again soon. We've been on a streak like 2 times in 2 months.
Yes, it's been awesome.
Yeah, let's keep that going. And in the meantime, the chocolates are in the mail.
Sweet.
Girl.
I'm excited.
All right, see you soon.
Bye.
Hey, if you've got a favorite episode, please share with your friends. Even better, tag us in your Instagram story or on Facebook, wherever you hang out online. We'd love your help spreading the word about the Today's Mama podcast. We're also taking interview recommendations. Send us an email at podcast@todaysmama.com or shoot us a message on Instagram over @todaysmama. Catch you next week.
You've been listening to the Today's Mama podcast with Rachel Hersher. To find out more, go to todaysmama.com. That's todaysmama.com. Today's Mama, connecting moms and families with the best of today.